Hey friends, welcome to Such Videos. In this video, I'm going to be showing you guys how to make a knitted cat beanie. This is literally my second DIY knitting project since my last one, which was the crop top one that was literally years ago. It's finally my second one after a bunch of you guys asked for more knitting DIY projects. I'm sorry it took so long, but I'm just really a beginner knitter. Like, I barely know what I'm doing, but I was still able to put this together. So this tutorial is definitely for those who maybe aren't the strongest in knitting, who can't crochet, which is also me. I feel like I've seen this cat beanie crocheted everywhere on TikTok, but no one has ever knitted it. So I tried it and it seemed to have worked, and I have the tutorial for you guys to do it as well right here. I loosely followed this tutorial on YouTube / on their blog, and I'm also going to list down the link in the description below. I'm also going to list out the general measurements I followed, which is also from that source. Although again, since I am very much beginner, ratchet beginner, I kind of eyeballed a lot of the things. I didn't even use up one whole spool of yarn, so that's definitely enough for this project. And in terms of how long it took me, I would say in total it would have maybe been about like 10-ish hours, maybe even less. I definitely took my time though working on this project since knitting takes a bit of time. I think it turned out super cute, super worth, and let me know if you guys have any questions in the comments, and other than that, enjoy the tutorial. So first you're gonna need knitting needles. I'm just using size US 10. I'm sure any average size needle should work just fine. And for yarn, I'm just gonna use this cream color in the medium 4 size, which I think is just the average size that's out there. So to start, we'll need to cast on. I'd highly recommend watching an actual beginner's knitting video if you've never knitted before. But to explain the best I can, I'm just gonna make a slip knot for the first stitch on my needle. And once I'm done that, I'm just gonna tighten it so it's a bit smaller and it's gonna fit right onto my needle. And once I'm done that, I'm gonna start my stitches. So I'm gonna put my needle through 1 stitch, loop yarn over, pull it through, and then make that loop go over the first needle, and then pull the string taut. And I'm basically gonna repeat this process until I have 80 stitches. For someone like me who just got back into knitting and hasn't done it in a while, this was definitely a bit tougher to kind of start with, but it definitely leaves a nice edge on your hat using this casting on technique. And like most things, it just got easier as I continued to do it over and over again, so don't be discouraged if it's really tough at first. And once you're finally done with that final cast on stitch, as you can see, 80 stitches is quite a lot to have on your needle. You can also definitely go shorter if your head is a bit on the smaller side, but then we can just get started on knitting. So quick rundown on how to knit. I'm just going to put my needle through my stitch, loop my yarn over, loop that stitch out of my other needle, and just repeat the process all over again. I definitely don't follow the proper way to hold my needles, but this is just what I'm used to. I feel like you can just do whatever style works for you. And one other tip when knitting as well is after you've brought your stitch over and you need to tighten up your string to not pull too hard, otherwise your stitches are going to look really tight and your project is going to end up really tight, and it'll take a lot longer to finish your project. You kind of want to find a middle ground between how tight you want your stitches to be. But the main thing is that you want your stitches to look even, so you want to stick with a tightness that you're going to follow consistently. And if you're a beginner, don't be discouraged if you knit really slow. I remember when I first started out, it was like the slowest thing ever because I was so careful with my stitches. But over time, you kind of get into the flow of it and you're able to just keep knitting. And so what we're making basically is one really long rectangle. And the idea is that the whole length of the rectangle is just gonna wrap around our entire head, and then we're just gonna seal up the sides and the top to make a toque. So don't worry, no fancy knitting patterns or techniques, we're literally just making a long rectangle. And just to speed up the process, I just made sure to knit whenever I found free time. Also a reminder to count your stitches so you make sure you didn't drop any. But yeah, I literally multitasked and just got into the flow of knitting whenever I was watching a TV show that didn't need so much attention, or if I was just bored, it was a nice little break. And a useful one too, because you're making a project. Progress report on the scarf. Watching Alice in Borderland as I knit. And before you know it, progress happens right before your very eyes. And as you can see, I tried to keep my stitches loose and even all throughout my project, and just continued knitting as much as I could. Also, if anyone has any tips on how to keep your yarn untangled, please let me know because that would be really, really helpful. I am literally knitting in the car as I wait for my ride to run their errands. And so the idea is that you want to knit your rectangle long enough so that it kind of covers over your forehead and extends over your head. And you could measure the width with a ruler according to the measurements that I've provided in the description down below. But in my head, I just wanted to go longer than shorter because it's better to be safe than sorry. If you made it too short, you wouldn't be able to wear it, but if it was too long, you could still curl up the edge and it would still fit just fine. Oh, I might have lost a stitch. Oh my god, please no. Please, 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 please. Oh, thank god. I didn't. Knitting's not supposed to be hard. I'm just clumsy. Just to show you guys how long I ended up making mine, it was about 20-ish centimeters and about 55-ish centimeters long. But again, I mostly eyeballed it and just wrapped it around my head to see what it would look like. Now that I've decided it's long enough, I'm gonna start casting off. So I'm first gonna make 2 normal stitches. And to cast off, I'm going to use the technique where I'm going to take the first stitch that you put on the needle and pull it off the needle over the second stitch that you made. And make sure you don't accidentally pull off both. I'm just going to use a finger to kind of hold down the other one, whatever makes it easier for you. And then next I'm going to just knit on another stitch. And then following the same process as before, taking the original stitch on the needle and pulling it over the one we just made. And you're just going to repeat that process until all of these stitches are casted off. And just to make things easier, I just started pulling off the stitches with my fingers since I thought it was a lot more easier that way. And another tip I used was to use my other finger to kind of hold down the stitches so it was easier to control it not slipping off. And as you can see, this casting off technique leaves a nice edge, and I'm just going to continue that until all of those are done. And once you get to the last stitch, we're going to stitch it onto the other needle as normal, take off the original stitch as we have been doing, and then stretch out the long stitch, snip off the end of the string, and then kind of put the string through the loop to make a knot to seal off the cast off. And once you have that, you now have your long and nice rectangle. Now you could leave it here and make a really short scarf, but we're here to make a hat. So here I'm just kind of testing out the size based on how long I made the hat and how wide. As you can see, it's kind of a bit big, but my idea is that I'm gonna roll up the edges so that it kind of looks like that. And since I'm happy with that, we're gonna start off by sealing together the 2 ends of the rectangle. I don't have the usual sewing tool that knitters use, so I'm just going to use a crochet hook with yarn tied to the end of it. I'm just going to string it through one side on the corner and then string it through the other side to kind of just tie everything together. The idea is that I'm going to lace the 2 ends up to make a cylinder for the hat. But first I'm going to tie a knot onto the end of the string just to make sure I have an anchor point where I can actually pull my string tight. In terms of how I'm actually lacing everything together, I'm just taking the 2 stitches on the closest edge of one side, pulling my crochet hook through along with my string, pulling all of that tight, and then doing the same on the other side with the next 2 stitches. So again, I'm choosing the 2 on the edge, and I'm just gonna lace my crochet hook through it, pull my string through, and then that's the pattern I'm gonna follow for the rest of the lacing. Once I am fully done lacing up the sides, we're then gonna move on to the top of the hat. So continuing where I left off, I'm just gonna lace together the two corners, making sure I don't pull too tight, otherwise it's gonna shrink down the sides of the hat. My idea is that I'm gonna close all of that off. So my technique here is finding the kind of edge of the stitch where it seems like there's kind of an X or a crisscross right on top of the edge of the rectangle, and then just pulling and lacing through there. I really don't think it matters which edges you use to lace your hat together, just make sure that they're not easily pulled and that they're sturdy and that they're also right on the edge of the rectangle. So here I'm just finishing off the last stitch and that closes up my whole hat. I'm then gonna put my crochet hook through the inside of the beanie and then tie the knot there just so it doesn't show on the outside. And after making the first knot, I'm just gonna make a second just to make sure everything doesn't come loose. And because I'm a warrior, I'm also gonna just loop my crochet hook through one of the stitches on the hat and make a knot through there as well. And to finish off, I'm gonna snip off the end of the string and then also untie the original knot we made from before. For me, this piece of string was still attached to my ball of yarn, so I just needed to undo that, make a new knot, and then snip it off from the rest of the yarn ball. I'm also going to snip off any other long pieces of yarn left over, and with that we are done with the beanie portion of the cat beanie. But before we are done, we do have to make the cat ear portion. And the idea is that with our crochet hook and some string, we're just gonna make long stitches along where we would kind of make the cutoff for the ears. And the idea is that it seals it off and makes them a lot more pointed and stiffer so that it looks like cat ears. So after cutting my piece of string and making a knot, we're then just gonna put my crochet hook through the inside of the beanie out towards one side, and I'm just gonna make a knot to make sure that my string is anchored, and then I'm gonna put my crochet hook through both sides of my beanie all the way through with my string and kind of just go back and forth from one whole side to the other and just keep tightening that up and making that kind of back and forth sewing motion. I'm gonna do that for a few times until I feel like the ears are kind of stiffer and really sticking out. And when I'm happy with it, I'm then gonna take my crochet hook and put it back through just the side I just came out of into the inside of the beanie and then tie it off from there. Once again, to make sure that the knot just doesn't show on the outside of the beanie because it doesn't look as nice. And of course, I am double knotting it and then again looping it through an existing stitch on the beanie as I did before. And snipping that off, we are done with one cat ear. And now we're basically going to do the same to the other side, stitching at around the same area that we did for the other side. And with that, we're done our cat beanie. Moment of truth. We've got the hat. Okay, I'm going to put it on without folding first. Oh my gosh, it's so cute. Look at the ears. Okay, I just can't see. I made it slightly too big. You know, adult size head, I should have known it was like for an actual adult, not like me, who's a smaller size and like everything. But if we tuck it up like this, that is so cute. And it's actually like fits pretty snug. Again, I made it pretty big, but like tucked in like this is cute. Honestly, the time and effort put into this was worth it. This is so cute. Comparing it to the crochet made ones, like it's not even that bad either. It's like basically the same thing. And I can't crochet, so I can't make the other one. Might as well make this one, and it turned out just as nice.